we're going to keep this short. I also welcome, if you have questions or if you got ideas you'd love to hear us talk about. So we've heard some conversations just earlier about all things cardiovascular being an issue in the fire service. There's also some of this dynamics of, wow, new tech sounds great. Oh, wow, this big shiny thing. But it doesn't actually solve a problem if you're not actually bringing value to the fire service, if you're not actually enhancing, making life on the fire ground better. It's really all just noise. And Danny, I almost want to start this question with you, with the idea of like bringing new tech into public safety, and you being a retired fire chief and coming across a lot of these crazy pictures. Why is technology? What's the importance of ultimately working with industry, working with fire service, and how is it? And what's the most important thing with actually bringing tech that helps firefighters and especially fire chiefs make better decisions?
Technology it solves a problem. For example, one of the issues that have been plaguing the fire service for years is location. Where are firefighters inside a building, and when they get in trouble, how do we get to where they are? Technology could bridge that gap to help an incident commander or a rapid intervention team immediately go to where a firefighter is should they get in trouble, lost, trapped, or incapacitated in some fashion. It could also provide biometric monitoring that can be monitored from the incident command post or safety officer or a medical officer that can predetermine before a firefighter gets into trouble and perhaps pull them out, get them relieved, whatever they need to do. But it's a proactive approach.
And Shawn, you actually have already started to deploy and look at biometric monitoring, physiological alerting from your perspective, and having also a background in fitness. This guy's a retired bodybuilder.
Oh, come on, man.
But talk about kind of the importance of knowing how your people are doing and how does technology play a role in that?
So I think exactly what Danny just said, right? The fire service inherently exists and is wonderful at responding after the event. In the 1980s, I believe, probably a decade after America Burning came out, the fire service switched to a preventative side of focus, fire prevention. Everybody here that was born and raised in 1980s and 1990s went through Fire Prevention Week, and you got to see the fire truck, you got to do this, you got to do that. Well, as a result of that, fatalities across the nation have decreased year after year. Fire codes have increased year after year. The influx of smoke alarms or now sprinkler systems, better building design, et cetera, has played a role in that. We're seemingly, with our firefighters, we haven't done that. We've still waited until after the event to respond. And I think that there's a core group of us, myself included, I'll place myself there, that look at something like what we're doing with the wearables to try and get us more to that preventative side, right? I can institute all the physical standards in the world for my guys and girls. I can give them the best tools and equipment to be as healthy as I can. I can do all of that. But if I cannot adequately predict when something's going to go wrong, and maybe it's not going to be 100% of the time, but dang it, I'll take 1% of the time at this point. Because if I can predict one, then we're better off. And to me, that's where we're headed. That's what I hope we're able to do with this device that we're testing. That's what I hope we're able to do in the Fire Academy, in the controlled environment that we're utilizing it now. And then eventually for my men and women in the streets, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just as Danny said, the way I say it all the time is, I imagine a day where my safety officer, who does work underneath me, that safety chief gets a message across his computer. Firefighter Jane Doe's blood pressure, 244 over 208. Okay, Firefighter Jane Doe's at engine 30 today. Pick up the phone, call engine 30. Hey, Lou, what's up with Jane? I don't know. She came in today. She said she felt like crap. She's been laying down all morning. Hey, go check on her, right? Probably a good thing.
So Fred, rumor has it you've spent some time with the Air Force, which I think is a pretty big fire service, right? But one thing with that is like how it's 2024. How it's sort of one of those moments of like, why are these problems still happening, particularly as cardiovascular events? I'm curious in your thoughts of like how do you with these challenges that still exist like cardiovascular, the dynamic of bringing tech into public safety and sort of a wrist-worn wearable or something that is monitoring biometrics, also looking at location. How is that also something that we can look at putting onto I can't even speak English right now, and here I am leading this panel. The dynamic of putting a wearable onto a first responder sounds so novel. And then the idea of consuming this data and using it in a way that the commander can actually receive value from. Why is this something that already doesn't exist across the industry? It seems like this is something that you would have thought is already solved by now, but I would love your thoughts in terms of like your experience within the Air Force Fire Service. If you could paint the picture on that.
Absolutely. So I'll go back a little bit, back to the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Several years ago, we lost an airman. And when I say airman, those that served in the military, it was an E3. And he was over in Okinawa, Japan. And the way the fire station was built over there, the sun was setting, they were backing the truck up, and the driver didn't see him. And he crushed him against the wall inside the fire station, Kazarowski. And typically, sometimes, I won't say always, so don't quote me, but it takes a bad incident to drive decision makers to make better decisions. And I won't necessarily say that in the fire service, but I'll just say that when it comes to the government. And traditionally, we've been underfunded for many reasons, but that drove to where we were able to put backup cameras on every fire truck going forward. And so I bought the fire trucks for the Air Force for a number of years. All total, I had a little over 41 years with the United States Air Force, 21 on active duty. And they brought me back for whatever reason for another 20 to run operations, which we have a little over 180 fire departments around the world. There's only one fire department larger than us, and that's CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE's got about 15,000 roughly. The Air Force has just a little over 13,000 firefighters around the world. On any given day, we operate a little over 2,200 fire trucks on a given day around the world. But so when things like that happens, you have to know that that's the time to grab the bull by the horns and make a point with 4-star generals, because that's who runs the military organizations. And so when things like that happen, because health and safety is paramount, and whether it's cardiovascular, whether it's other types of things, health and safety for firefighters, the PPE, what it's made out of, you can't imagine how many times I've spent time with lawyers over this foam issue that you see in the news, PFAS, PFOA. I grew up in northern Michigan, just across the lake from you here. And some of you might know where Flint, Michigan is. We don't have a base within 200 miles of Flint, Michigan. But I had to spend time in law offices because Flint, Michigan blamed the Air Force for their water issues. But that's bureaucracy at its best, right? But being able to look at technology and modernizing the fire service is job one. And he alluded to health and safety officers. That's big for us. And this type of technology is just going to make us even better at what we do. And the whole thing is being able to come home from the incident. I tell people all the time, they said, what do you do? I tell them one of two things. They either tell them I work in the bad day business, because nobody calls us to ask us if we're having a good day.
Right? Amen.
Because when they call you, they want you to make the bad day go away at whatever the cost is. And we get put in some very risky situations sometimes. I know you probably watched Chicago Fire. I'm not saying that it's all true, but we do get put into some tricky situations. The flip side of that is I tell people I work for the largest childcare center in the world. And that's because firefighters are no one different, right? They have their own things, so that people are like, childcare center. I'm like, well, we have our own problems too, right? we're one big family. Whether we work 24 on or we work 48 on, whatever it might be. But again, at the end of the day, the importance is that everybody goes home. Whether it be the people that called 911 that this used to be, or it be the firefighters and health and safety is at the top of that.
Well, you said that phrase, everyone goes home. I know that's a staple of NFF, and I heard some of the challenges in the fire service. One of them is resistance to change, and you also talked about the dynamic of never letting a crisis go to waste. And so I think part of this whole industry is actually the technology all exists. We have hardware, we have the software, but oftentimes it's really a human element here. I would love some of your thoughts and kind of starting down the road with Danny of kind of from a NFF perspective of how do we leverage some of these crises and disasters that happen and turn it into positive change to continue to leverage this technology that exists to help allow firefighters go home.
Yeah, so one thing we do at the NFF, as probably most fire departments do, is study line of duty death. As a matter of fact, we'll take it to the next level and we conduct what's known as staff rides, where we'll travel out to where a line of duty death occurred or multiple firefighter line of duty death event occurred. And we bring in survivors and members that were actually at the fire. And we try to pull that information that you don't find in sterile reports. What was the culture like in that particular organization? What was considered normal? Individual behaviors. We pull that out. We talk to family members. How did the culture contribute to the line of duty death, if it did, and what impact did that have on the families? And we try to learn from it. And as far as applying all that today, I'll say I've been in the fire service for a long time. And as I mentioned, I had a very blessed career. And I have not been intimately involved with a line of duty death. And I thank God for that every day. I've known several of my colleagues, though, that have died from occupational cancer. I'm very hopeful, however, because I look at this new generation that's coming up, this new generation of firefighters that are growing up with technology. They're used to technology. And firefighters like myself, I'm still struggling with the remote control for the TV. But I'm hopeful that they're used to it. They know how to work it. They're uncomfortable without it. And so I think this is another tool that we're giving them to adapt the fire service into the future. And actually, I'm more hopeful now than probably I've been in a very long time.
Build on that?
Yeah, we're going down.
All right. So I want to take just a second and pause, because I hear tech this, tech that, tech this, tech that, tech doesn't belong in the fire service, the whole nine. Need I remind anybody in here that there was a time in the United States of America where firefighters put fires out with literal buckets of water in the bucket brigade, right? Until the invention of a fire pump, right? Mm-hmm. And then it was carried to the scene by a horse until the invention of a steam engine, and then eventually a motorized engine, and so on and so forth, right? All of that is technology. This is just another part of that path, right? So anybody who ever says that tech doesn't belong in the fire service or whatever has absolutely no understanding of even existence. So I'll just stop right there, right? Because that could be construed as being negative. The NFF, they did a tremendous video. You and I spoke about it earlier on the District of Columbia Fire Department. If you guys haven't seen it, please watch it. The initial idea of that video, when I sat down with John Tippett and we talked about it, was what has DC Fire Department learned from line of duty deaths? Ultimately, as you and I spoke earlier, Kevin, 15 of us not talking to each other, ended up being so much more than just line of duty deaths. But we'll focus on line of duty deaths. I've been riding fire trucks for 26 years. I know I don't look that old. Thank you. But I walked through the doors at 16 years old, and I remember vividly the very first formal event at the volunteer firehouse. There was an old man who was like 130 now, who is somehow still living, and he had these stripes all the way up his sleeve, and I didn't know what they meant, right? I'm a 16-year-old kid, never been around a firehouse, and I was like, Les, what are those stripes for? He's like, well, you get a stripe every time you go to a fireman's funeral. And I was like, oh, that's weird, but okay. Well, obviously, I come to realize that they're service strikes, one for every 5 years of service, and the man literally has them up all the way from his wrist to his shoulder now at this point. I'm not lying. When he's older than you, Kevin, and you're a vampire. Anyway, I digress. First and foremost, I can say after 26 years of doing this, I'm damn tired of going to firefighters' funerals. If I never have to go to another fireman's funeral, that's great. And when I die, I don't want anything to do with the fire service and the firefighters' funeral, because far too many of them were preventable and far too many of them were long before they should have left this earth. Okay, so I'll stop right there. The best way, and I've learned this through experience, the best way, though, that we can honor anyone that we've lost, whether it's to cardiovascular health, it's due to their own poor decision making on the fire ground, which I'm sorry, but that's a hard reality to say to someone sometimes, but it is a cause. It's due to communication, it's due to situational awareness, it's due to external factors that were outside of someone's control. The best way we can honor from them is, or honor them, is to learn from it and never repeat that again. And I think that speaks back to your point in the whole idea of the NFFF and the whole idea of analysis of NIOSH reports and looking at common themes and common factors, and then influencing industry change, training change, PPE evolution, or something like this, tech-wise, right? I don't know if you guys know, but we're getting ready to hold a pretty big event in Washington, D.C. on January 20th. It happens once every 4 years. And this year in particular is going to be quite exciting because we have had quite the contentious race for the presidency. And I don't want to speak on anyone's political views here, but I'm just going to make an observation, and I'm going to bring it to light. I'm the Area Command Safety Officer in Washington, D.C. for the IMT for that event. And we know we're going to have roughly 1 million people there for the inauguration. That day just so happens to be Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday as well, which is always a large event in Washington, D.C. And I'm not saying that everyone that's there to support that is different politically based, but a good portion of them will be. So from an incident commander standpoint or an incident management team standpoint, the potential for catastrophe is immense, right? It's always a second away in Washington, D.C., but on that day in particular, it's going to be immense. What I've learned this week, being here with Paul and Alex and everyone else, is the evolution of Ascent's current product and the marriage that they've made and the integration that they've made with TAC has led me to offer them, hopefully, an opportunity. I have to run it by some people that outrank me. But for us to be able to track where every single person is that is there with DC Fire and EMS, any of our mutual aid partners, etc., the entire day. That way, God forbid, something happens, we know exactly where they're at, the easiest way to get to them, etc., 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 so that hopefully we're not learning from another NIOSH report.
You could build on all that conversation, but also we heard the word TAC for the first time. You could give everyone a quick 1,000-foot view on TAC as well as building on everything we just talked about.
Absolutely. Understand, in the military, we call it SA, situational awareness. And if you don't have it, you've lost the battle. Not saying you lost the war, but you've lost that battle. So understanding SA is always extremely important because, and hopefully he'll agree with me, but as firefighters, for us on an installation, that's a home game. I've always been one to look at things from a sports perspective, but that's our home game. We should never lose a home game because we should know day in and day out how our equipment works, the facilities that's on our home field, the whole 9 yards. If we were to leave to go do a mutual aid or automatic aid, things like that, I refer that as an away game. And situational awareness comes in much more with that. On January 20th, he's going to work with a lot of other folks than just his normal fire folks or the police that he knows day in and day out or EMS. So the situational awareness is of utmost importance. What TAC can bring to that is knowing where all the assets are. When I say assets, whether that be the person, the equipment they're on, whether it be a fire truck, some type of mobile command post, or some other type of vehicle, is of utmost importance to know if somebody else is coming in with an incident, you know where everybody is at. So to me, that's where TAC comes into play and can make their job even that much more easier and efficient, knowing that they've got their ducks in line with situational awareness. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. But it is of extreme importance, because if you don't have SA, you're going to lose somebody. You're not knowing where all your folks are. And when you have to do inventory or roll call or things like that, somebody says, hey, where's so-and-so? Oh, don't know. Haven't seen them in hours. But with TAC, you know where they're at.
So this conversation would probably go on for hours, and just for the sake of the fact that there's still actually plenty of food, plenty of drinks, and I encourage you all to get it. We'll still have the raffle open for a couple more minutes, so if you have any buying tickets, there's still a bunch of awesome prizes. Go and sweat that credit card. But I would love to kind of just give everyone a final mic drop moment of just sort of like a quote or sort of message or something you can leave us with here today as it pertains to technology, fire service, and just a path forward. Danny, we'll start with you.
I could probably sum it up in one word, that finally. Thank you. Thank you for developing this equipment. It's the course of my career. This is stuff that we've been asking for, looking for a long time. Locators, the biometrics, it's thank you. So I don't know what else to say, but finally it's starting to happen, and I'm excited. I just wish my career was starting instead of in the twilight. It's not ending, but it's in the twilight.
So we've done a tremendous job of talking about the fire service and about this. And you've heard me, obviously, or hopefully, you've heard the passion that I have for firefighter health and safety and on a nationwide scale. And I've been blessed enough for the last couple of years to speak on that. But I'm going to change hats really quick, and I'm going to talk about it from a parent's perspective. You see, this type of technology doesn't just benefit the fire service. I have a 19-year-old son right now who's training to be an all-American badass. All right, he is currently on Fort Moore, Georgia, and he is training to be an airborne ranger. And I'm going to tell you right now that if the United States Army can understand what the fire service right now is understanding, I will sleep a whole lot better at night knowing that when my son jumps out of a damn helicopter and he's in a foreign land at an away game, that we know exactly where he is, his firing squad is, everything else, every movement they're doing, and God forbid something goes wrong, we know exactly where to go to get those boys back home.
Thank you for having me. It's been great to be here. The one thing I'll say with modernization and technology is, if it saves one life, no matter what the cost is, it's worth it.
So that now concludes our panel. We're going to have kind of final transition to the rest of the night from the CTO of Ascent, Alex Worczek. So thank you again for the panel.